Humanity and Outlands, Anthropological and Sociological Concerns. My background is as a practicing field archaeologist, anthropologist, and sociologist. My PhD is in criminology and criminal justice because I want to use my archaeological skills for consulting work in the criminal justice system. So I'm all over the place. But one of the problems we're going to have as we expand beyond the Earth's borders.
Make sure you're facing them.
Yes.
Talking.
As we expand beyond the Earth's borders, is the fact that we're going to be carrying us out there. Okay, I'll just hold it. There we go. The problem is the human creature is a very complex one that we don't understand very fully themselves. But there are some constants in all societies and all cultures that will affect what we're going to do. So I'm going to try to touch on these in the limited time available.
You might try holding it, just putting it in your badge so you wouldn't have
I tried that and it fell out.
well, I think you can put it inside. I think it's not yet.
I'll just hold it. Now, the first warning I'm going to give deals with evolution. Many of us, sorry, I keep walking away from the camera. We think that this is the next step in our evolution. Anyone who's read Arthur C. Clarke, 2001, the whole evolutionary idea, that our next step is our children will become gods. Evolution is not linear. Evolution is a grenade going off constantly, throwing shrapnel in all directions, sometimes backwards. And as a result, natural selection will be choosing from what's left. And it's entirely possible we may be going backwards in some ways. I'll be interspersing these warnings with the entire thing. Anthropology itself deals with the study of culture, past, present, and future, and the human animal known as Homo sapiens, hopefully to be known as Homo sapiens non-terrestrialis, as we leave the bounds of Earth. Sociology is the study of defined subcultural and cultural groups within that interacting. I'd like to suggest a few definitions. The term exo-anthropology has been tossed around. I want to kind of firm up that definition a bit. The study of humanity in space and the effects on culture and society from that experience. There's also a possibility we may encounter something else out there. So I'm proposing xenoanthropology and xenoarchaeology for the other, to use an anthropological concept. That which is not us. I kind of dislike the term ET and alien just because of some of the tragic mess that's gone along with it in our entertainment media. Now, yeah, okay. Okay. Culture refers to the beliefs, values, behavior, and material objects that together form a people's way of life. It has two components, material and non-material. Many of you are experts in our material culture, our technology, if you will. Non-material culture is everything else. Without culture, we would be one very pathetic, scared animal on this planet. We have no claws. We have no teeth. We're not really cut out to survive. We need the ships around us. We need houses around us. Now, these constitute everything that's not actually composed of you, or governed by your DNA, and even modify some things that are. You have to eat, but what you eat, when you eat, why you eat, on certain days and not on other ones. That's culturally determined. Culture and society are shaped by the technological underpinnings. We are the rectangle people. Look around this room. What we write on is rectangular, our little electronic communication devices. We organize space most efficiently using rectangles. Other cultures do it differently. Third world, Africa, some Native American constructions, dwellings are round. Everything is arranged in a radial pattern. Different forms of thought are formed by this. Now, culture evolves as free energy and technology increase. I think most of us would agree with that statement. Lenski was a technological determinist who theorized quite a bit on that. However, he had no idea as to what would happen when we left Earth. or could change our own DNA, or extend our life using mechanical appliances. Not all technological improvements are beneficial to overall society. Nice little one called the Manhattan Project, may I mention. Some people can see some drawbacks for that. Remember what I said about evolution? It's not just animal evolution, not just people evolution, it's also technological evolution. You can have drawbacks. I'm used to dealing with a classroom where I can wander around. And part of our culture, our programming, when you're born, you're a blank slate, a blank piece of paper. You have to learn everything, don't you? Once you learn it, it's the right way to be. And anybody who's different is wrong. But what if you find yourself someplace where people are not like you? You experience culture shock. How many of you have experienced culture shock moving from one area of this country to another? Yes. How many of you have experienced culture shock moving from military background to civilian background? Yes. Culture is what we use to make sense of the universe. And when we're experiencing an unfamiliar culture, it has a jarring effect on the individual, which leads to another problem we have. This effect can become somatic. It can affect the body. You can lose sleep. You can gain weight. You can lose weight. You can hate everybody around you. How many of you did not enjoy culture shock? Now, actually, without culture, we are not people. We have to have culture to set the rules and for us to interact with each other. And each one's going to be a little bit different. The second warning, we cannot be truly objective when studying culture. The one that you are most familiar with, you are going to tend to think is the most correct one. Am I wrong? It's your programming, folks. How many computer jockeys do we have in here? Yes. We have our own ideas, norms, cultural foci, anything totally unbiased state. We can't even study ourselves easily. We must constantly fight against bias, against a slanted viewpoint. And when we encounter something from somewhere else, imagine how much of a problem that's going to be. Ethno and anthropocentrism must be guarded against. Anthropocentrism would be thinking humans are the best, and what are we run to? Use the technical term. Now, culture is carried by language. How many of you notice that there is a difference between the way of speaking in the South and in, shall I say, more urban areas?
Wow, what you talking about, sugar?
People see and understand the world through the lens of their language. Language defines reality as self. Think of something that you don't have a word for. The first thing we do, we try to find a word, a term, some way of putting a label on it. Now try not to think of a blue horse. We are programmed. We realize that, we get wiser, and maybe we'll keep from shooting ourselves in the foot when we encounter something out there. It'd be nice if we could keep from shooting ourselves in the foot just dealing with the 6.5 to 7 billion on the planet now. We have a little few issues there. It limits ideas and reaction channels for the individuals. For example, some cultures transmit an appropriate response to new or dangerous stimuli, freezing up, waiting for more information like the Hopi tend to. Very cautious. Living right next to them are the Navajo, who tend to act first rather than wait. Their language is structured almost completely from verbs and modifiers, which is why the Japanese went slowly out of their minds trying to decode it. Next to them are the White Mountain Apaches, similar idea as far as responding to threats. Incomplete information and understanding can cause trouble, as in the case of the classic Maya. When I started my studies in Central American archaeology, the Mayans were benevolent, peaceful peaceful star worshipers. No. Turned out those guys could give the Bloods and the Crips a heart attack. Those guys were party animals. We learned how to read what they were saying. We found out that their astronomical knowledge was used to settle personal scores. And if we're that wrong with people who actually exist in space and time with us right now, or within limited periods of time from us, imagine how wrong we might be when we encounter another group. Cultural universals. These are found in every known culture, and have been found on every known culture. Of course, everyone splits them up differently. 27 cultural universals, 52 cultural universals, California laundry list. That's my tribal stuff. But whenever we create a new culture or change an old one, the Mississippian culture that died out because of disease on contact with the Spanish, the Creek Indians came from them and didn't even realize they were related to the mound builders. But they still have the same cultural universals. Athletic competitions, gambling, jokes. Certain things are common to all humanity. And belief in ghosts, that's one that I was at. It's everywhere, even in supposedly atheistic and non-superstitious societies. Microeconomics. There are always these small-scale business transactions, usually having to do with gambling, which is found in every culture. And how many of you have read Freakonomics or Super Freakonomics? It shows how economic thought can be moved. All societies have some economic system, even hunter and gatherer societies. It shows that the institutions there are not separate from each other. So I'm happy to do a bit of basic groundwork here. For some of you, it's been a while since your last social science class, I'm sure. Now, one of the things that's also universal are culture-bound syndromes. Diseases that only occur in cultures, certain cultures, don't occur in other ones. It has been approached from psychological and psychiatric viewpoints, but it's actually culturally determined. There are anorexia nervosa in our society. The person may have psychiatric ills. They'll also have physical ills, but that's caused by the structure of our society putting unrealistic goals of physical attainment out there. In other societies, we have such as the amok syndrome. You've heard the term going amok? The southern pack rim, it's fairly common there. Someone will just become depressed after a period of time, then just go completely caveman on everybody around them with the nearest blunt object or any type of weapon. And the person won't remember what happened if they're taken alive. Susto, Fried's disease, that's one that's coming out of the Caribbean. People tend to get a paralytic, even catatonic type reaction. Anorexia nervosa, I've commented on. Coral or Shogyong, also known as genital stealing disease, which is actually spreading. It's what we would call an irrational belief that males are losing part of their anatomy because of supernatural reasons, and it must be corrected. You can buy clamps for this in Japan. Our technological equals. Yes?
I believe I get spam related to this on a daily basis.
Yes. But it's shown up in Africa. Several related countries in that area, it started to show up there as a result of the stress of modernization. And what we have here is an illness that may be very personal, but it's also caused by the very structure of the society that we're a part of. How many of you have ever heard of cabin fever? Yes. Proper name is Biblok talk. Sounds like I'm cussing in Klingon, but anyhow. And Has anyone ever been in Alaska during winter? After a while, you're in a small space with somebody else. This is very much like a vessel that might be in deep space, listening to the same jokes over and over again, eating the same food over and over again, and then finally you look over at the other person and think, I wonder if I took out the salt and pepper shaker and maybe they turn into a large turkey leg and I get buried in my diet. You know, or they go amok. And this does occur. Again, this is an area where we can't get out and walk away from somebody safely. Lata, Malaysia and Indonesia, middle-aged Muslim women have no say in their lives, pretty much. But if you're diagnosed with Lata, you can split somebody's head open. Because it's considered a curse that's been laid upon you. And if you startle somebody with Lata, they can just go totally freaking on you. Now, take as a thought experiment. You've got a vessel, size of a Nimitz-class aircraft carrier. It's moving at 10 to 15% C, heading out towards Proxima Centauri. How many of these are going to show up, or new variants of those, in that sealed environment? The very structure of the culture itself. Think of all the aberrant things that submariners or bomber pilots have done over history. Did you ever see the movie MASH?
Yeah.
Again, you have cultural syndromes in that. Now, sometimes the material world, the material technology and the non-material technology can intersect, causing problems. Pressure-induced psychosis. Breathing bottled air, you don't realize the mix is going wrong and you want to be full-blown schizophrenic. And sometimes just the very fact that you're in such an unusual environment in the first place, a normal reaction doing normal things can also cause disastrous things like what happened to SL-1, the reactor accident in 1961. So I just pulled a rod up, several inches too far. 3 people died. How many of our technologies are that sensitive now? Well, those are things just to start with, just dealing with the human part of the whole thing. But what's going to happen when we look out the window on well, let's say we've got a domed city on another world, and somebody's looking, we find somebody looking back. It's going to be very interesting indeed. I'm going to forecast 6 things about any form of intelligent, sapient creature we might encounter. This is just suggestions, but it's grounded in anthropological theory. They will not be apex predators. They're not going to be like the creature from Alien. That thing's already at the top of the food chain. It doesn't need any technology or culture. We needed culture to get us from being last in the food chain. We lost to squirrels, yes. Anyhow, they will have material and non-material culture. They'll have language, some way of transmitting knowledge from one generation to the next. There'll be some type of tool user. They'll have an awareness of time. They'll be able to think in the abstract, have patience, and be able to plan. That's a lot in common. If we encounter another other out there, we can use what we know about the human sciences even now to help us move forward, help ourselves, and maybe get us ready for the next step. Well, social stratification is another constant. What's going to happen if we modify people's bodies so they can take long voyages in space? Where will they fit in our societies as we create new ones that throw them out into the stars? And of course, the others themselves. Third warning, it is not the duty or responsibility of the universe or other life forms to meet your narrow capacity for understanding. Be prepared to scuttle all previous knowledge in light of new information. I've had to learn so many Mayan timelines and so many things about it. Just my own cultures, the ones that are on this planet. Imagine what we're going to have to rewrite when we get off of this planet. Thank you.
got time for at least 5 minutes for questions.
Okay?
The scientific method assumes that you do an experiment, you get a result, you do it over and over again, you get the same result to confirm. Looking, I believe, at essentially every culture of Homo sapiens that have grown up widely isolated from each other, they come up with the concept of a deity or a great spirit.
One of the cultural universals.
Something greater than the culture itself. Is that a scientific experiment, and does it indicate, what does it indicate?
Okay. Well, religion is a cultural universal. We found that in every culture that we've examined thus far to date. And we have what we call natural experiments. Things that are in process that we're able to observe, like we could observe a experiment in the laboratory, but we just have to take advantage of what's around here. There's ethics involved about taking a group, isolating it, bringing it up for birth with no outside stimuli. It would just be completely off the scale. But religion and the need for religion does seem to be one of the cultural universals. And if you go with natural experiments having validity, then I think you have something for it. But one of the problems we have with studying humans is we have a critter that will lie to you, a critter that will lie to itself. And an electron doesn't care what kind of a day you have. People, or, oh my God, yeah, or something like, sorry, let me get my voice back. People have so many different forces acting on them. They're difficult to study. Not impossible, but you must be very careful. I hope that helps.
So, well, what is your bottom line then?
My bottom line is there is some form of religious experience known to all cultures, and it seems if we don't have it, we will create it. Thank you.
Good, thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
And then I'll get
You do make a good case for the difficulty of communicating with others basically the same size scale and timeline as humans. Now, in one of Robert Forward's wonderful books, I believe Dragon's Egg,
I've read it.
the communication goes on between humans and things who live out their life in a second. And lately I've thought about beings at the other side of the scale for whom a human life would be a second.
Yes, the difference in timelines.
With the difference in timelines, it is certainly conceivable, we're talking about the universe, could we communicate, do you think, across such a vast time difference?
I think we could, with effort, if we are willing to make the effort.
Or if they are willing to make it.
Or if they are, yes.
If you were observing a population of individuals as we were 10,000 years ago, and you knew everything about them, would you be able to predict that they would become a technological society?
Look at that thing, Linda.
Just pass it that way.
It's right here.
Okay.
It never made it over here.
Okay. I'll just comment on what it is and pass it around. This is older than any other tool that you're able to find except for a flint flake. This is an atlatl. This is a spear thrower. It was used for probably pretty close to 1 million years. This is a single tool. And looking at this, you could draw conclusions that they had taken objects that weren't this, created this, and will continue to try doing it. Whether they'd ever make that jump beyond banging rocks together is another question. Making future forecasts is extremely difficult. Yeah, where was this?
Do you think it's inevitable that creatures, this is a discussion that I've had with Les and Claudio, and they have opposite opinions, creatures who have a spear extender like this will suddenly evolve an explosive technology that in 10,000 years later will have something that we have? Is this an inevitability?
I have a 7mm bolt-action Mauser rifle that works along similar principles. It projects a projectile 2,000 meters. But the principle is still the same. I take something here, I put it over there, I put it through whatever I want for lunch. So, I think you can make some predictions, but don't get tied to your predictions. Don't think that the universe has to agree with you. Okay, yes.
But some of the fundamental principles between a culture that was 5,000 years back and today, like the example you gave of the gun and that, the basic principle is that if I can reach you without you reaching me, then I have control over you. I have advantage over you. And those basic fundamental principles have lived through the ages.
Right. You're able to move to abstract thought.
Yeah. And that same thing goes with religion. And religion started off as they used the abstraction of personification of physical phenomena that they could not explain. Like, why did the sun rise in the east and set in the west? And there was a whole, every culture has a story about it.
Right.
To explain that
Creation stories are one of the great cultural universals right there.
Pardon me?
The creation stories are one of the great cultural universals.
And for that matter, winds, thunderstorm, and they all became gods, quote unquote, in varying cultures around the world.
Great, thank you, Sam.